Hello and welcome. My name is Vineet Malhotra. I have a very special guest with me on the broadcast today. Padma Shri Dr. Sanjeev Bagai is going to be speaking with us. Dr. Bagai, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with me. First question is that there is a lot of hoopla, a lot of talk about a third wave, which is imminent. It's inevitable in India in the next few months to come. Keeping that in mind, what is supposed to be done in terms of the mutation of the virus and how it is likely to wreak havoc, how it is likely to go through some metaphors in the days to come. What is the perspective on that, and how to be careful in averting this third wave?
Hi, it's great to be with you, Vineet. So very quickly, I think these viruses, especially the RNA viruses like SARS-CoV-2, which is now causing COVID-19 as a disease entity, are known to mutate. The RNA viruses have mutated for centuries, and viruses and human beings coexist. Now, viruses have to mutate because they are evolving. Why do they evolve? Because the ecosystem in which they live in, viruses also have to survive. So this is something which is called as selective pressure, either because of temperature, environment, heat, pollution, indeed medication, vaccines, drugs, or any antivirals which you use. The community acquired viral infections, they mutate. So in the mutations are of two types. One is called as substitution and the second is called as deletion. So what do these terminologies mean? Very often people tend to use them loosely. So when you take a strip of the gene code of a virus, an RNA virus, and you lay it down on a laboratory table, the gene per se, every gene in the RNA virus of SARS-CoV-2 has 30,000 base pairs. Base pairs of what? Of amino acids. Amino acids are the small building blocks of the protein component of the virus. And in that, each pair, what they tend to have is 1,273 block items. So these block items are in a particular sequential code. They go from 0 to 1273. Now, each number has a significance because it runs in a particular sequence. This sequence, again, it runs as what we call as Jugalbandi. That means it goes as 2 amino acids with 2 amino acids. So that means it goes as ATGC. So these are the names of the amino acids. So when you talk in terms of the names of the amino acids, if any amino acid goes away and a new one comes in, it's called as substitution. Occasionally an amino acid goes away and no new one comes to replace it, is called as deletion. So the middle part of your protein in your spike protein in your SARS-CoV-2 virus, it looks like a crown and it has various spikes, hundreds and thousands and millions of spikes, each viron. Each S part of the protein has two components, what is known as S1 and S2. S1 is the one which is away from the virus. S2 is the one which joins the virus. So it's like two little probes which join together.
Correct.
Your S1 latches on to your ACE receptors in your host cell in your membrane, the famous ACE2 receptors. And S2 makes the virus fuse into the cell. So your S1, your prominent one, is the one which latches on to your ACE receptors, and S2 makes it fuse. It's called as the fusion machinery into the cell through TMP RSS2 receptors. They're different receptors. These S1 and S2, the most dangerous part of it is called as receptor binding domain. Your receptor binding domain is the one which has the maximum predisposition towards mutations in terms of substitutions and deletions. Now, what are these things which we call as different kind of items, different country names, different code names? So, first of all, we should never name a particular mutation in a virus as a country name or a city name. So, I'm totally against the UK strain, South African strain, Brazilian strain, Indian strain, and so on. So, the commonest one which was first delineated was called as DG614. That means your D is substituted by G, and location is 614 out of 1273. That's your lineage. So mutation is what takes place, and you get something which we call as a variant virus. When the virus becomes that predisposed to cause clinical damage in a society, it is called as a strain. So mutation, variant, and strain are three separate terminology. So the famous one, which was mainly seen in European Union and England, was called as B117. The one seen in the African subcontinent was called as B1351. The Brazilian one, which was called as P1501. The one in India, which is being seen very often, and in London, is what we call as B1617. And then it is type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 2 is the commonest. Now, what is very, very fascinating is that they have done what we call as cryo-imaging of 4D high definition enhanced magnifying the S1 and S2. So the S1 and S2, what it does is it's very much like a spaceship which is coming to a site which we call as a docking site. So your ACE receptors have docking sites. Your S1 uncouples with S2, and that uncoupling releases energy. When that energy is released, your S2 pushes S1 to latch on to your docking site, and your S2 just behind S1 comes in and fuses into the cell. So it's a very smart virus the way it operates. Now, your receptor binding domain has what we call as monomer, dimer, and trimer. That means the projections on your spike protein are in three different forms. So your most lethal form is what we call as trimer. So it goes like this. And your three-prong, what we call as trimer, it is called as RBD, up or down. So down is in dormant mode, up is in attack mode. So it's opened its fangs to come and latch on. When it latches on, this smart virus is hugely advanced virus. It builds bridges to connect onto the cell. So there are three types of bridges. One is a disulfide bridge, second is a hydrogen bridge, and second is a salt bridges, sodium and potassium salt bridges. So it builds like a cobweb, and it's impossible to detach the cell to detach away from it. So it's you can take it as 100% hit once the virus comes and latches on. That's why these mutations are so lethal and invasive. That's why the transmissibility is more, the replication of the virus is more. So long and short of it is, once it comes into your respiratory tract, it goes down into your lungs much quicker, it replicates, then it spreads to different parts of your body, and you have various kinds of organ damage. So your main thing which we need to do pan-India is what we call as genomic sequence. We've heard of this in various social media and news platforms. So apart from antibody testing for serosurveillance, a gene sequencing very, very commonly has to be done in India. The recent report which has been shared by Honorable Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan is that 65% of the gene mutations in India which have been tested in the last week, 10 days, have been of B617 type 2. Now, this is more commonly hitting in children. That's why the next wave, we are always on guard that it will affect children a lot more, because it has a predensity towards the children phenotyping, the immunophenotyping. Keeping that in mind, I think between now and your potential next wave, what we really need to do is to keep our utmost precaution. We need to make sure that not only the children above the age of 18, but all young adults need to get vaccinated. Children must be protected. The Covaxin trials are happening. I'm pretty much sure in the next 2 months we would have approvals for it for below the age of 18. As soon as that comes in, we need to go and get it done. Before the third wave, what is critical is to have a complete lifestyle change. I've always said this, we've always thought of lifestyle, but never thought of life. But I think now we need to change our lifestyle. I think we need to have a culture of working out of home. Do not interact and don't socialize in crowded places. Mask becomes important before the first vaccine, in between the first and the second, and after the second vaccine, at least for another 1 year. The concept of wearing a mask should be a double mask if you're going out. Of course, social distancing and hand washing and so on. Do not waste your time, energy, and money in getting redundant tests done, including antibodies tests done. They don't help therapeutically or in terms of preventive measures. Don't get extensive lab tests done. The only thing which you need to do is to consult your doctor in case you have fever, is to take simple paracetamol and isolate yourself. The long and short of it is the mutations are increasing by almost 30-40% week on week all over the world. That's a normal trend. Maybe by next year we'll see different kind of variants. But hopefully by end of this year or early part of next year, because a large proportion of Indian population would have been vaccinated, we will see a much milder version of the virus. And perhaps because of cross reactivity with other beta coronaviruses, we may reach even what we call as an endemic state. That means a subdued state. So this SARS-CoV-2 will stay with us maybe for decades, but it is not going to hurt us the way it has hurt us in the last 2 years.
Right. Dr. Bagai, one last question before we let you go. Just like the mutant, just like the coronavirus, is the vaccine also supposed to evolve? Because there are, talks on social media, and you can put them to rest and lend some perspective as well. There are talks on social media that eventually this nuisance of a virus is going to find its way around the vaccine as well. A lot of people are apprehensive about that happening.
Yeah, so the virus is mutating. In fact, just a couple of days back, they have done a 3D animation through an AI model where they have actually pictured how this latches on. So our vaccine has to evolve accordingly. So what this virus does is, in its prongs, what it is attaching on to the host cell, that means the human body cell, each part of your protein has 3 hinges, and so it's like a joint. So we call it a hip joint. It's medically labeled as a hip joint in the virus. So it has a hip joint, it has a knee joint, and an ankle joint. Each joint allows flexibility and maneuverability of 360 degrees. So this virus has a probe. What it does is, when it comes down and is landing onto your docking site, it first scans the area. Then it evolves, it rotates. So it does 4 things. So each joint does 4 things. It twists, it oscillates, it turns, and it maneuvers to find out to a site where it can latch on. These latching on sites are going to be determined by which vaccine is going to work or not work, right? So it is extremely important to first delineate and see what is the prevalent strain. That's why genomic sequencing becomes critical. We need to see which is the dominant strain at that point of time, and global data is often taken to collaborate. And then we may have to tweak the vaccine next year. But hopefully there are many trials happening now. They are even combining influenza and coronavirus vaccine. They are combining pan-coronavirus vaccines. They've even combined corona vaccine with a pneumonia vaccine, which we call as pneumococcal vaccine. So I think a lot of things will evolve in another 6 months, 12 months, but hopefully our vaccine program should roll out quickly.
All right, Dr. Bagai, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us.
Thank you.
And hopefully the next time we talk, we'll have more people inoculated. And right now it's at 20 crores, and perhaps the pace needs to be picked up because the vaccine is the only defense against the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Bagai, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vineet.